Let's do opera noir. Yeah.
Let's do opera noir.
Perfect. Tribble, it's your time to shine.
All right, y'all. Since we're talking about work today,
Okay.
I figured I would talk about an actor since we got two actors amongst us. I'm talking about me and the voices in my head.
Got him.
Thank you so much.
Of course you were. What do you mean? Yeah.
Will Smith, though, he has an album coming out. He's a rapper again, which is insane.
Don't put him in a box. He started that way. Don't put him in a box.
I guess if you slap somebody on live TV, you gotta come out with a rap.
You gotta start rapping.
I mean,
hope he got a diss track. I hope he got a diss track on it.
That'll be hilarious.
Spiritual rapping, though, no?
He is spiritual rap. He's in a different place. He's not the same person anymore.
Okay.
Gangster rap, somebody slap you. I'm sorry.
You want Will Smith to come out with a gangster album, bro? That's not gonna happen.
But so
I would buy it though.
Facts.
He's been on a promo tour promoting his album, his upcoming album, and he went on a streamer's platform recently. And this specific streamer asked him to name his Mount Rushmore of actors.
Ooh.
Top 4 actors of all time. And the first actor he named was himself, of course. He said he got to put himself on there. But the other 3 he named were Denzel Washington.
I get that.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
I get that.
And Marlon Brando.
I'm not a...
I can see why he said it, though. I can understand.
He's older.
People revere The Godfather, so I can understand why he said it.
I get it.
I have no op.
But that's his list.
That's his list, yeah.
I have no op.
Well, who's on your Mount Rushmore, babe?
Who's on my Mount Rushmore? Wow. If I start with commercial success and also won an Oscar, I would have to start with Will Smith. Like, he's box office Willie. Nobody else has done in the movie space what he's done. If I'm talking about art films and range and the ability to play a bunch of different characters and just be great, like, I'm going to go with Denzel Washington. My favorite actor of all time, as everybody knows, is Wesley Snipes. He pretty much created the Marvel Universe. He's played everything from Tu Wong Fu to, what's the other one? White Men Can't Jump, Play Blade, like New Jack City. There's no role that he hasn't played. He played a baseball player in major leagues. Like, Wesley Snipes has done everything. And if I have to go with one more, we're talking about range and we're talking about commercial success and the ability to do everything. It would be a toss-up between Samuel L. and Lawrence Fishburne.
Okay.
And I'm going to be honest, I like to keep it black, but Daniel Day-Lewis, Tom Hanks, Leonardo DiCaprio, like, if I'm being honest and not keeping it black, you can't have a Mount Rushmore without Leonardo DiCaprio, Daniel Day-Lewis, and Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is the only actor ever to win 2 Oscars back-to-back as a leading male. So those would be, like, putting it in around Mount Rushmore, just those 4, I can't do it. And the reason why I stay black, I go with black first, is because Hollywood wasn't created for black people. So for those black men to have that success with the amount of roles that's not written for us, I always give them the nod.
Right.
But that's not taken away from the talent of our white counterparts. Like,
for that exact reason is why I have Sidney Poitier in my top 5. Sidney Poitier broke the barrier for a lot of the people to do anything that they're doing.
You know what?
He set the bar.
You know what? I can't even. See, now we say that Sidney Poitier. What about Morgan Freeman?
True.
The list goes on.
So it's interesting you're naming these people. So there's a documentary coming out later this month called Number One on the Call Sheet.
Yeah.
That's going to talk about the success of a lot of these black actors, which I'm excited to watch.
I am
Same.
too.
I'm excited to see it too. Yeah, that's coming out.
Out of that.
Cool.
Next, I guess we can talk about politics a little bit.
Okay.
So recently, Trump, the president, our president.
That's not my president.
The people them president.
The people them, president. Signed an executive order to dismantle the Department of Education, which is insane. The Department of Education, they control funding for education and higher education, grants, funding for services for children with disabilities.
Right.
So a lot of people think this is going to put people who are already at risk further behind, like low-income families and special education students. And it's going to widen educational disparities.
Of course.
So the Trump's idea behind this is to give power back to the states.
I'm not opposed to
I think something that we understand about the Civil War is that apparently it was about states' rights. So here we are back.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm so glad you brought up the Civil War. Because if people understand where the Department of Education came from, they would understand why this is never for us as black people.
Anyway.
Right? After the Civil War, the UDC was created. The UDC is the United Daughters of the Confederacy, led by a woman named Mildred Rutherford. And Mildred Rutherford's whole purpose of the United Daughters of the Confederacy was to uphold the lost cause indoctrination. The lost cause indoctrination was the indoctrination that the Confederacy was here to save America. So what they did was they changed all of the textbooks that we see federally to become whitewashed. That's why there's no Black history in the textbooks. So for me, the dismantling of the Department of Education for the federal level takes away the power of the federal level to tell all of our kids what they're going to learn in schools. Mm-hmm. Now, him giving it to the local leaders like states allows the governors and the mayors to decide how they're going to educate and the funding they're going to use for their constituents.
Which I think makes it a little bit more tangible for people in their respective states. Because if you're in those local elections and you're, lobbying for the things that you want, then there's probably a greater chance of you getting those things.
Now the problem is doing that. If you cut the Board of Education, the federal funding that comes down to these states get cut as well. And a lot of that federal funding was to help people who look like us. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of torn. I'm torn because our people need the funding, especially since we pay taxes. We need that funding to educate our kids. But I'm torn because the education they teach our kids is not the real education. I'll give you a perfect example. Jackson, just last month, had to do a story or had to do a report on Western expansion. And all of the stuff they talked about in Western expansion never talked about the black cowboys and the Black sheriffs and the people who actually built this country, the Asians that came over here. All of the stories was about what the U.S. government did to help grow America. And I was like, this is not real history.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I said, Jack, you ever heard about black codes? He was like, no, only from you.
Yeah.
And that leads me to my point. I don't care what they do with the Department of Education because I am going to always educate my kids. Period. Like whatever funding they pull, I'm going to make sure that my kids understand who they are and where they stand when it comes to history. So my opinion on the Department of Education is let the federal government do what they got to do. I'm going to make sure my kids know. Mm-hmm. Period.
Yeah, I love that.
Op or no op from the rest of the crew?
I got no op because I'm not going to say anything as eloquent. So.
No, but people know
Devale,
like that's what
he knows the history. Yeah,
that's what
exactly.
I wrote that book. I wrote the book, The Ellis is in a Time Machine. Like when I learned about Mildred Rutherford, shit had my skin crawl. Like so, y'all actually had a woman go into the textbooks and say we're not going to say this, we're going to say this, just to uphold. And for people who don't know what the lost cause indoctrination is, go back and watch Birth of a Nation, the very first Birth of a Nation, which was the first movie that played in the White House. Right, during Reconstruction. And the movie was of white men in blackface terrorizing the people of America. And the Ku Klux Klan came to save Americans because during Reconstruction, the story they told of the lost cause was that they finally allowed slaves and people of color to be a part of the government. And they ran the government rampant. And they needed the KKK to come save the people of America from the black men that were raping and stealing. That's the lost cause indoctrination. The fact that the Confederacy was about states' rights and it wasn't about slavery. So what they're continuously doing is trying to indoctrinate generations that the Confederacy was here to save America. Right. Not that they were pretty much treasonous people who tried to separate from the Union and lost. The biggest thing is that the Confederacy lost the war, the Civil War, and they never wanted to talk about them losing the war.
Right.
So I think it's important for people to understand where the Department of Education sits when it comes to history and our people, not just about funds. Because they will give our people funds and then have someone educate them incorrectly. So that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But
I mean, we've never relied on the textbooks.
Ever. All of our kids have tutors and mentors. Like even when we didn't have